Rain hissed against the armored hull of the dropship as it sliced through the jungle's misty ceiling, atmospheric thrusters whining in protest. Inside, 10 Galactic soldiers sat in silence, visors glowing faintly beneath matte black helmets. Boots clanked against the deck. The air smelled of sterilized metal, ion propellant, and just a hint of sweat, a cocktail of nerves, despite the squad's outward bravado. Sergeant Vel'Koraz leaned forward, elbows on knees, his tone casual but edged. One human. Female. No armor. No heat signatures, no firearms, no threat. He looked around, as if daring anyone to disagree. This is a mercy sweep. Private Solon scoffed, slapping his helmet against his thigh. We're sent across 2 sectors to ghost hunt a civvy in the trees? Another soldier, Erex, chuckled under his breath. Guess Intel thinks a woman with twigs is worth orbital deployment now. Koraz let them laugh. He didn't like the mission either, but orders came from high command. Supposedly some recon drone caught heat distortion in this quadrant, and rumors had flared up since the Earth offensive. A lone survivor who never left the trees. Some said she was a ghost. Others, a sniper. The files said otherwise: civilian status, no military tags, no confirmed weapon use. Just missing. Presumed dead. As the dropship shuddered and landed with a final mechanical groan, the door hissed open, revealing a landscape smothered in green. Jungle vines hung like serpents from twisted trees. The air was damp and electric, saturated with insect hum and distant, low animal cries. Visibility was poor. Fog clung to the underbrush like it was alive, watching. Koraz disembarked first, plasma rifle resting easy against his shoulder. The rest followed, boots sinking into soft soil. HUDs pinged no life forms. No heat. Nothing. Exactly what they expected. Split formation, Koraz ordered. 3 units. North sweep first. We clear grid by sunset. Keep chatter tight. Solon muttered under his breath. We're hunting ghosts in soup. The squad dispersed with practiced fluidity, fanning out into the haze, sensors pulsing through the flora. Koraz's section pushed northeast. The air grew thicker, leaves clinging to armor, branches reaching like skeletal fingers. Twice he checked his scanner. Still no movement. 10 minutes in, static flickered through comms. Echo unit reporting in, came a crackle. Found something. Symbols carved into tree bark. Human. Koraz halted, frowning. Define symbols. Vertical slashes. Patterns. Fresh. Tools or blade marks, but clean. Deliberate. Koraz's gaze narrowed. Mark it. Keep moving. He motioned for his men to follow. The jungle, once loud, was oddly quiet now. Even the birds had stopped. Only the soft hiss of breath through filters remained. Elsewhere, Bravo unit advanced through knee-high brush. Erex walked point, rifle up, scanning, bored. That changed in an instant. A sharp metallic click. His foot froze mid-step. Wait, he hissed. Too late. A whir of tension released. Vines snapped upward, dragging him screaming into the canopy. His partner whirled, weapon raised, but found only empty air and a swaying tree. Echo unit, this is Bravo, the soldier shouted, voice rising. Erex is gone. Taken into the trees. We've got traps. Comms exploded into life. Say again. Traps. You engaged. Koraz's heart kicked into overdrive. All units regroup. Defensive posture. She's here. Another voice crackled through, tight with fear. She's unarmed, right? Just a civvy. A scream cut across the comms. Then silence. In Koraz's HUD, 2 tags blinked out. They'd just lost 3 men. He scanned the treetops. Nothing but shifting green and pale, shivering mist. She's watching, muttered Solon, eyes wide. What the hell kind of civvy does this? Koraz crouched near a tree marked with deep, symmetrical slashes. Not random. Not tribal. Tactical. markings for range or direction. She was mapping the terrain. Or leading them. "She's baiting us," he growled. "But to what?" 2 hours passed. The jungle swallowed sound, light, time. The squad moved as one now, tighter than regulation allowed, stepping slow, every root and vine suspect. They found more signs, tripwires made from vines, pressure plates hidden beneath mulch. Ingenious. Primitive. Effective. Another trap sprang, this one a pit. Private Nerol went in hard, his scream cutting short as sharpened bamboo tore through his suit. Blood bloomed in the soil. Koraz didn't flinch. He couldn't afford to. They pulled Nerol's corpse out only because they needed the data from his cam feed. The woman wasn't just hiding. She was hurting them. Then they found the first message. Painted on a flat stone, in something dark and glistening, blood, maybe, were the words. "Unarmed, huh?" Koraz stared at it, his breath fogging the visor. He felt something shift in his gut. Fear wasn't new, but this was different. It wasn't the enemy that rattled him. It was the quiet. "She's hunting us," said Solon softly, voice barely audible. Koraz nodded once. The term unarmed had never sounded so naive. They set up a temporary base, a perimeter of sentry bots, motion sensors, heat traps. But the jungle offered no rest. Every chirp became a warning. Every creak a possible trigger. Night fell hard. The fog turned silver, moonlight filtered through a fractured canopy. The camp lights flickered as if the power grid itself feared the darkness. One of the sentry bots emitted a sharp ping, then short-circuited. When they reached it, the wires were neatly severed. No damage to the frame. She had disabled it with surgical precision and left a single feather on top. Another message. "I see you." Solon snapped. "This is insane. We're elite forces. We've got tech, tracking, orbit support." "She's got the jungle," Koraz said flatly. "And time." The squad's numbers had shrunk to 5. The mission clock was irrelevant now. They weren't sweeping. They were surviving. Someone suggested calling for evac. Koraz rejected it. Pride, maybe. Or instinct. Then came the sound, just a whisper, too soft for comms to confirm, but unmistakable. A laugh. Not mocking. Cold. Detached. Koraz turned, weapon raised. Nothing. They didn't sleep. At dawn, a scream ripped through the trees. They ran toward it, weapons blazing. Too late. Another body. Suspended in the canopy. Strangled by vines. No signs of struggle. His rifle hadn't fired. "He didn't see it coming," Solon whispered. "Didn't even aim." "She doesn't miss," someone muttered. "She doesn't have to." Koraz stared into the jungle. It stared back. "This isn't war," he said aloud. "It's execution." He was starting to understand. This wasn't about resistance or survival. This was territory. And they were the trespassers. The woman, whoever she was, wasn't hiding. She was defending. Every step they took deeper into the jungle was one step deeper into a kill zone she'd spent months, maybe years, preparing. Koraz checked his squad's BIOS. 3 remained. "Pull back," he ordered. But the jungle wouldn't let them. A trail they swore was behind them now looped ahead. Markers they'd left were gone or altered. The fog thickened, as if obeying her will. Directions lost meaning. "She's turned the whole damn forest into a maze," Solon said. "No. Into a trap," Koraz corrected. And then the final sign. Carved into a tree. Sharp. Precise. "Your tech won't save you. My silence will end you." That's when Koraz knew it wasn't a fluke. Wasn't luck. This was mastery. She'd learned their tactics, their patterns, and she was folding them into the earth like thread into cloth. She had no plasma rifles. No drones. No armor. But she had patience. She had skill. And most terrifying of all, she had nothing left to lose. Koraz looked at the jungle, really looked, And for the first time, he understood the mission file's final line, buried deep beneath layers of redacted data. Status: unconfirmed. Warning: if encountered, do not engage. Avoid direct confrontation. Subject may possess adaptive warfare instincts. They hadn't listened. Now, they would pay. As they pressed forward, a figure moved in the canopy above, so quiet even the leaves didn't notice. A silhouette, draped in camo, pulled from the jungle itself. Her eyes, dark and unblinking, watched the squad with predatory calm. No weapon in hand. She didn't need one. The trap had already closed. Rain whispered across the canopy like secrets passed between ghosts. The jungle didn't sleep. It breathed. Every leaf trembled with tension. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps just behind them. And now, Sergeant Vel'Koraz had no illusions. They weren't here to find her anymore. They were prey. The mission had transformed from reconnaissance into survival. And she was still watching. Only 4 of them remained. Koraz, Solon, Kale, and Venerable. The squad had been 12 strong at the start of the drop. 8 had vanished in ways too calculated, too precise, to be the work of chance or terrain. No plasma fire, no struggle, just absence followed by the grim echo of discovery, when the jungle decided to show what it had taken. They had moved the previous night under cover of darkness, trading tech for instinct, torches for stealth. Light made them visible. Visible made them dead. She moved through the trees like vapor, silent and devastating, unburdened by noise or fear. The quiet had become their enemy. And in that stillness, she thrived. Solon had started whispering to himself. Short bursts of sound, too fast and too slurred to understand. A coping mechanism, Koraz assumed, until it turned erratic. Now the private twitched at shadows, flinched at rustling ferns, fingers trembling on his trigger. "Cut it out," Koraz snapped low. "Keep your head." "She's in the leaves," Solon murmured, scanning the foliage with a 1,000-yard stare. "She's above us. Below. Every step, we're inside her weapon." Kale nudged him with the butt of his rifle. "Focus, or next trap gets you." Ven stayed quiet, always watching the rear, a disciplined ghost in matte black armor. She was the calmest of them, unervingly so. She hadn't said more than 5 words since Neryl's death. But she hadn't missed a detail either. When the rest faltered, Ven noticed the slightly darker patch of soil that marked a pressure plate, or the way birds went silent 2 seconds before a snare tightened. She never guessed. She observed. Koraz trusted her. He led them into a narrower gulch between moss-choked boulders, where roots tangled like claws over stone. The terrain suggested a trap zone, a choke point with no high ground. But there were no signs, no carvings, no triggered mechanisms. Just a fresh stillness that made every breath ache. Koraz raised his hand. "Hold." Ven stepped beside him, eyes scanning with precision. She pointed, slow and firm, toward the ledge above them. Carved into the rock, nearly invisible unless you knew where to look, were slashes. "For this time. Different from the others." "She's logging us," Ven murmured. "Body count." Solon gagged and spit into the undergrowth. "She's tallying." Kale swore under his breath. "This isn't warfare. It's ritual." Koraz stared at the slashes. 1 for every kill. But the spacing mattered. Not a wall. A calendar. A countdown. "She's not improvising," he said, voice tight. "She has a plan. A schedule. And we're behind it." They moved quickly now, sharper than before. Every step carried weight. Every silence warned of something unseen. Koraz pulled data from what remained of their tech, trying to map a path back to their drop point. But the satellite sync had been cut. Jammed. Probably sabotaged. Probably her doing. Then came the smell. Smoke, faint and woodsy. Solon smelled it too. "Campfire." "Decoy," Ven replied. But Kale was already stepping toward the source, convinced. Maybe desperate. The lure of human warmth was magnetic after hours of walking in damp silence. "Stay close," Koraz ordered. They followed the scent through a series of twisted trees, past a half-collapsed log bridge covered in moss. And then they saw it. A flickering fire, carefully built, set in a stone ring beside a tree with a hollow trunk. Beside it, a metal canister, rations, human military issue. No one moved. Kale broke first, rushing forward. Finally. Something real. Koraz started to shout, but it was too late. Kale reached the fire, then froze. His feet stuck. The ground looked solid, but the instant he moved to crouch, it gave way. A net yanked him skyward, slamming him into the branches. Screams exploded in comms. The net tangled around his limbs like a spider's cocoon. Ven fired at the supports, trying to cut him down, but the tension lines jerked backward, dragging Kale, fast, disappearing into foliage above. Then, a snap. No more screams. Koraz swore under his breath. 3 left. Solon turned toward the fire, now clearly artificial. The flicker came from a reflective panel that mimicked flames, heatless, perfect mimicry for sensors. She set bait, he said hollowly. She watches us burn ourselves. They fell back, retreating into thicker forest. No one spoke for a long time. The jungle felt tighter now, vines like nooses, branches like claws. They stopped only when Koraz nearly walked into a tripwire stretched between 2 roots, too fine to catch with eyes alone. Ven disabled it with 2 flicks of her knife. She's not relying on luck, Ven murmured. She calculates. Every path we take, she's already taken it first. Solon crouched low beside a tree, pressing his hands to the earth like he wanted to melt into it. We're not in a jungle, he whispered. We're in her mind. That evening, they found another sign. This one wasn't carved or painted. It was sung. A woman's voice drifted through the air, distant and faint. A lullaby. Old Earth dialect, soft and off-key. Koraz froze. Playback, he said. Ven ran the recorders. Nothing. The mic registered silence. No audio. Solon asked, eyes wide. Then what the hell are we hearing? Koraz looked up. No movement in the canopy. But the sound came again, closer now. The voice wasn't mechanical. It was human. She was near. Fall back, Koraz ordered. Now. They moved fast, hearts hammering in unison. But the lullaby followed, weaving through the trees like it rode the mist. Ven stopped. Raised her weapon. Movement. Koraz saw it too. Just a flicker between 2 trees. A blur. A shadow. A presence. He fired. Solon joined, spraying the foliage. The rounds tore through leaves and bark, splitting trees, but hit nothing. When the smoke cleared, the lullaby had stopped. Then, from just behind them, a new voice whispered through the comms. You missed. Koraz turned, firing blindly. But it was already gone. She'd hijacked the signal. She's in our comms, Ven muttered, voice grim. She's everywhere. The squad kept moving, adrenaline raw in their veins. Solon's panic had bloomed into something worse, fatalism. She lets us live, he muttered. When she wants. Just long enough to feel it coming. Ven's grip tightened on her blade. Then we take that choice away. We hunt her. Koraz nodded slowly. We stop running. They doubled back, eyes peeled not for signs of traps, but for traces of human passage. If she moved through the trees, she'd need anchor points, repeating patterns of terrain she could traverse quickly. They looked for those. Hours passed. Then they saw it, a cache. Hidden beneath a rotting stump, marked subtly with crushed fern tips. Inside, arrowheads fashioned from old ship debris, coiled cords of fiber optic wire, sharpened bone fragments, hand-tied nets. Human-made. She wasn't improvising. She was repurposing. Everything they left behind became ammunition. And still, no sign of her face. No hint of age, expression, emotion. Just the trail she chose to leave. Solon stepped back, clutching his rifle. I don't think she's human anymore. Karaz remained silent. He wasn't sure he disagreed. That night, they set up a trap of their own. An old sniper trick. Karaz took bait, his own helmet rigged with heat modules, set it up on a raised platform, and lured attention with faint audio playback from comms. Then they waited in darkness. No sound. No movement. Until a shape passed. Karaz tensed. Ven held her breath. The bait was untouched. But next to Karaz, Solon slumped forward, a small dart in his neck. He convulsed once. Then lay still. No alarms. No struggle. Karaz checked vitals. Gone. How? He whispered. Ven stepped back, scanning wildly. And there, on the nearest tree, another mark. This one was different. Not a tally. A triangle. A warning. She knows we're trying to trap her, Ven said. She's daring us. Karaz clenched his jaw, staring into the jungle that seemed to breathe in unison with the wind. One by one, she was unraveling them. But now they weren't just trying to escape. They wanted to find her. Because if they didn't, they'd be next. And no one would even know what had killed them. Not a war. Not a sniper. Just a woman. Unarmed. Until she wasn't. The cache was a revelation. Half buried beneath layers of wet leaves and half-rotted wood, it was tucked beneath an angled tree root, like a secret she never expected to be found. But Ven had spotted the unnatural mound, the hint of woven cord beneath earth-colored camouflage. When Karaz peeled it back, it wasn't just supplies. It was a manifesto in steel and strategy. Spools of tripwire. Shards of transparent polymer. Pressure plates no larger than a coin. Dismantled parts of remote triggers, each meticulously labeled and waterproofed. Sketches, actual ink sketches, on canvas scraps. Trap schematics. Jungle layouts. Fire zones. Trigger intervals. Kill funnels. She wasn't improvising. She was orchestrating. This is a control node, Ven said, voice low with awe. This is where she plans. Solon hovered over the open cache, not touching anything. Why leave it exposed? She didn't, Karaz muttered. We caught her between resets. Kale had called it ritual. Karaz was starting to see it differently. It wasn't worship. It was obsession. A need for mastery over the chaos of war. So total, so deliberate, it rewrote the rules of combat into personal scripture. And every entry had been signed the same way. A small symbol, scratched like a brand into each corner of the sketches. An inverted triangle pierced with a single vertical line. Human. Primitive. Intentional. Karaz turned to Venerable. We use it. Ven raised an eyebrow. You want to bait her? No, he said. I want to speak her language. They set their ambush in the clearing beyond the rise, where the jungle thinned into a marshy flat. Visibility was still poor, but manageable. They mirrored her style, silent, cruel, elegant. They borrowed her own wires, mimicked her pressure plates. Ven rigged a tension snare just beneath a pool of cloudy water. Karaz reassembled 2 trip darts from her cache and loaded them into a branch-mounted trigger they fixed into the canopy. And Solon, hands trembling, smeared mud across his armor and curled himself up like a corpse beneath the ferns, volunteering to be bait. If this doesn't work, he whispered, make sure it's fast. Karaz didn't reply. He couldn't promise that. Then they waited. The trap was supposed to take minutes. It took 5 hours. By then, the sun had dipped low enough that the canopy flared amber and gold, slanting rays through tangled branches like prison bars. Bugs hummed. Birds chirped and fell silent again. Something slithered in the underbrush, but no one moved. Ven's breath was steady. She didn't blink. Karaz felt her approach before he saw her. A shift in air. A breeze against his cheek that didn't match the wind. The faint crunch of foliage where nothing should have stepped. Then a voice, behind them, right at the edge of audible range. You set this for me? Karaz spun, too late. The tripwire hadn't triggered. The snare hadn't pulled. Solon's body was still. But she was standing just behind the trap, untouched, draped in leaf-camouflaged netting, face streaked in mud and ash. Human, clearly. Pale blue eyes like glass in shadow. She wasn't wearing armor, just a mesh suit and boots designed to make no sound. Her left hand held a small control stick. Her right hovered over a throwing blade. She had seen every wire before they laid it. "I appreciate the gesture," she said. "You're learning." Koraz lifted his weapon slowly, but her hand didn't move. She was already inside their perimeter. A shot would cost him more than it would her. "You're targeting Galactic soldiers," he said carefully. "Not just protecting territory." She nodded once. "Correct." "Why?" "Because you invaded," she replied. "And because I was left behind." Ven's voice broke in. "You're ex-military." The woman smiled faintly. "I was forgotten military. One of 3 assigned to this jungle when the collapse began. The other 2 didn't last." Koraz's eyes narrowed. "Collapse." She tilted her head. "You really don't know. You thought this was a clean drop recon op. Your command fed you sanitized data, didn't they?" The wind shifted again. Solon jolted up, tried to aim his weapon. She vanished. A blur of movement. Solon's arm twisted. Blade at his throat before he could scream. But she didn't kill him. She just held it there. Long enough. Koraz held out a hand. "Don't." Her eyes flicked to him. The blade dropped. She stepped back, fading into the trees again like a ghost dissolving into smoke. "I wasn't meant to be found," she said, her voice a whisper woven into leaves. "But you set a trap. And I respect craft." Then she was gone. For a moment, none of them moved. Solon collapsed to the ground, gasping. Koraz felt it then. Not fear, not rage. Respect. This woman wasn't wild. She was a system unto herself. A self-made algorithm of survival and punishment. Left behind by Earth, shaped by betrayal and abandonment, and reborn in the silence of her own traps. Ven leaned beside him, watching the direction she'd vanished. "She's not running anymore," Ven said. "She wants us to follow." "She left us alive," Solon muttered. "Why? Why not end it there?" Koraz looked down at the cache again. At the symbol. At the meticulous design. "She's not finished," he said quietly. "She's testing us." They didn't debate. There was no vote. As one, they gathered the cache into their packs and moved. Toward the path she wanted them to follow. Toward whatever came next. They followed no map now, just her signs. Carvings in bark. Stones laid in deliberate alignment. They passed through valleys choked with bone-white trees where no bird sang. Over a rope bridge made of vines and stripped cabling that dipped over mist-shrouded cliffs. Every step was a message. She was watching. At dusk, they found the ruin. Once a military outpost, now collapsed into vines and moss. Antennas bent like dead fingers. Concrete eroded and swallowed by roots. A comms tower stood tilted at 30 degrees, its upper frame cracked in half. Jungle had reclaimed everything. And yet, it was clean. No traps here. No kill signs. She was waiting. In the center of the ruin, beneath the skeletal frame of an old satellite dish, they saw her. She stood atop a collapsed drone carrier, arms folded, not hiding this time. The last rays of daylight flickered against her face, revealing the years carved there. The stubborn jaw. The haunted eyes. She wasn't old, just hardened. A survivor who had buried every version of herself that didn't serve her purpose. "I could have killed you 12 times, she said, not boasting, just stating fact. Koraz nodded. "We believe you." "But you didn't," Ven said. "Why?" The woman stepped down slowly, boots crunching over shattered tech and leaves. Her movements were fluid, grounded in silence honed over years. She came close, closer than before. And they didn't raise their weapons. "Because I wanted to see," she said. "If you could learn." "Learn what?" She turned to Koraz. How to think like me. Koraz felt the air shift. She wasn't talking about traps. Not just strategy. She was talking about transformation. About how war strips away protocols, medals, and orders, until only instinct remains. She reached into her belt pouch and handed him something. A recorder. Galactic Standard issue. Voice locked. Play it, she said. He did. The voice on it wasn't hers. It was a commander, Earthside. Cold. Clinical. Operation Wraith Shadow is complete. We've officially scrubbed assets from the jungle theater. The remaining field operatives are deemed non-essential. No extraction. No comms. Terminate all records. Silence followed. Solon swallowed hard. They left you. No, she corrected. They deleted me. She turned, walking back into the dark. Koraz watched her disappear again, but this time it felt different. She wasn't hiding now. She had revealed the truth. And she had left them with a choice. What now? Solon asked. Koraz looked at the recorder, then to the ruin, then to Ven. We finish this, he said. Not with orders. With clarity. And they stepped into the shadows after her. Koraz turned the object over in his palm, the jungle light catching its edges. A small disc carved from old alloy, dented, scorched. Primitive. Insignificant at first glance. But etched across the face in fine, deliberate lines was the same symbol they'd seen before. The inverted triangle and single vertical slash. Her mark. This was my unit's tag, she said, her voice low, almost reverent. Before the fall. Before command abandoned the region. Ven stepped closer. How long have you been out here? 5 years. Silence fell like a curtain. 5 years. Alone. Hunting. Surviving on nothing but memory and skill and spite. Koraz couldn't reconcile it. How she hadn't gone mad, hadn't turned completely feral. But then again, maybe she had, just not in a way they understood. You think this war is just about territory, she said. Just objectives and extraction points. But war is what you become when everything else is stripped away. She stepped past them, brushing against Koraz like mist. You still have rank. A team. A command link, even if they're feeding you lies. And you? Ven asked. I have this jungle. And the ghosts I left buried in it. Solon shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting to the tree lean. So what's this? A final lesson. No, she said without turning. This is the last step. For you. She led them deeper into the ruins, past cracked launch bays and moss-choked panels, until they reached a long corridor collapsed at the far end. A jagged opening led down into what was once a secure chamber, an ops room, judging by the flickering remnants of console lights still barely alive on backup solar. This is where the signal dies, she said, nodding at the array of rusted antenna components. No uplink. No rescue. Not anymore. You brought us here to cut us off? Koraz asked. No, she said. I brought you here to choose. She pointed to the floor. Symbols had been etched there in chalk and soot. Human symbols, galactic glyphs, blended together in something that looked almost ritualistic. It wasn't superstition, it was communication. A war is coming, she said. Not this skirmish. Not this jungle. Something bigger. And you have a chance to decide how you want to be in it. Solon snorted. You want us to defect? She didn't answer. Koraz stepped forward, trying to read the markings. They weren't maps. They were sequences. Routes. Choke points. Networked traps spanning kilometers. It was her final perimeter. Her last bastion. A living minefield that made use of every failed satellite, every collapsed transport, every patrol route that had ended in blood. You've been preparing, Ven whispered. This isn't survival. This is war doctrine. The woman turned, eyes sharp. I built a machine out of chaos. Because I knew, eventually, someone would come. Someone who might understand it wasn't just vengeance. Koraz looked up. Then what was it? She hesitated. A crack, just briefly, in the armor of her voice. Correction. Solon scoffed, but even he didn't fully laugh. Not here. She continued. They dropped us in without proper support. Left us to rot. I could have died. I should have. But instead, I learned everything this place had to teach. I adapted. Became what they never expected. You, galactic elites, you think we're all primitives. You see the rifle and assume it's all we've got. She walked toward the edge of the ruin, her shadow trailing like a ghost behind her. But we learned to turn your own technology against you. We studied the rhythms of your supply drops, the patterns of your tactics. You call us savages, but I've torn your soldiers apart with their own toys. Ven's voice was almost reverent. Trap Master. A name born of whispered reports and half-dead scouts. A myth. She turned slightly, expression unreadable. I didn't name myself. They followed her back into the jungle without speaking, deeper than they'd ever dared. The trees grew stranger here, taller, their bark like obsidian veins, branches forming natural arches over corridors of ferns. This was her cathedral, her last domain. At the heart of it stood a pit. Circular, deep, reinforced with scavenged steel and bones of fallen mechs. It wasn't a prison. It was a challenge. She stopped at the edge. The final trap is choice. Koraz stared down into the depths, where weapon caches glinted and small, flickering beacons marked escape tunnels leading out of the region. You leave now, you go back to command. Tell them you found nothing. Stay alive. Hide what you saw. Ven tilted her head. And if we stay, then you finish what I started. It wasn't loyalty she asked for. It was transformation. To step into her world fully. To be reborn by her code, by the discipline of silence and precision. To forsake the comfort of protocols and become the weapon Earth never wielded. Solon looked at the pit. Then at her. Then at his team. No rescues coming, is it? She shook her head once. Koraz felt the decision closing around him like vines. The war above was too sanitized. Too removed. This was war raw and real. And he couldn't deny it had changed him. Ven nodded first. I'll stay, she said. The war's already lost if we keep playing by their rules. Solon hesitated. But only for a moment. Then he followed. Koraz stepped to the edge, staring down into the dark. What's down there? She smiled faintly. Everything you need. To disappear. To become something they fear more than snipers or storms. He looked back at her one last time. Not at the traps. Not the ruins. Just her, silent, scarred, and utterly resolute. Then he jumped. The air was cold down there. Sharp. Honest. When the last of them had vanished into the pit, she turned back toward the canopy. The jungle greeted her like an old friend. She reached up, pulled the camouflage net over her shoulders again, and walked into the shadows. By the time the Galactic retrieval ships came weeks later, all they found were hollow armor shells and scorched insignia. No bodies. No footprints. Just whispers. The Trapmaster was gone. But the jungle had learned her name. And now it hunted too.